Hingað komin Eva Joly. Welcome to this program, Eva Joly.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure having you. Just to start with, I would like to ask you to tell me a bit about yourself.
Well, it starts becoming a long story because I'm getting rather old. I grew up in Norway. I left Norway when I was 20. I married a Frenchman. I studied law in France. I became a judge in France and an investigator, investigative magistrate, that we said. And I have led some of Europe's most important economic crime investigations.
This is a strange career because for a foreigner to rise so high in the French, within the French system.
Well, the French system does allow that.
Yeah.
Yes, if you work well in school and you take your examination, they have, competitive examination for entering professions. So when you are a French national, you go into competition with others for the places. So, but I think I was the only foreign judge in France.
Yes.
Yes.
You were what's it called in France, a juge d'instruction.
Yes.
This is an investigating magistrate, so you have the powers of a judge, but also you are investigating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meaning that when you have complicated cases like economic crimes, like presentation of false bank statements, for instance, this cannot be sent to court only by a prosecution investigation. You need a leading magistrate. And the idea that an independent magistrate is heading the investigation is that in France people do not trust completely the executive and the police forces. We have some sad stories about police planting proofs and so on.
Yes.
So people do trust the independent magistrate better.
And the cases of course, the case of Elf,
yes.
the oil company is the most famous. But you also were involved in the case of the politician, football magnate Bernard Tapie, and the case of the Credit Lyonnais.
Yes, they're very important cases. In the Elf case, after 7 years of investigations, 30 persons were convicted, and we were able to prove, my colleagues and I, that the COAs of this company, a very little group of people, had been able to steal 3.5 billion francs during a period of 3 years. And it was very interesting because it showed how the multinational companies works, how they are using the tax havens to enrich themselves. Because the lesson of this is that the most of the stolen money went to these people and their friends. They were telling that it was in the interest of the French industry, but what I proved was that it was in the interest of some of the leaders in the African oil-producing companies and in the interest of French politicians themselves, not the political parties.
And, well, many people were involved. Roland Dumas, the foreign minister, of course.
Yes.
And then there were...
I did prove that his mistress received $15 million from Elf for a flat in which Roland Dumas lived, and that she had also a salary without no service on it. But I have to tell that Roland Dumas was judged in first instance, was acquitted in the appeal court for this in the Elf case.
Yes.
He was later convicted for embezzling for the foundation of Giacometti. So today he is a convicted man for embezzlement.
And there were also threats, of course, in Africa and in Germany. This was where the party of Helmut Kohl was implicated.
Yes, because Elf did buy a refinery in Germany called Leuna, and they paid bribes, 256 million francs at that time. And this bribe was divided between the secret services in Germany and in France. And the interesting thing is that we tried to obtain that Germany should make investigations, and they didn't want to do it. They didn't make the investigations in spite of the proofs that I and Bertossa, the Swiss prosecutor, did send to them.
You had bodyguards during this time. During a 6-year period, I think you had bodyguards, police, constant police protection. Why was that?
I think that this investigation was very threatening to a lot of people. And in France, you do not have a stop button for the investigations. When an independent magistrate to head the investigation, nobody can stop it. So I think that the threat was a way to try to stop the investigations. And I think that a very important part of my job was to secure how long I could go and how not to go too long in order to get something to the courts.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you were threatened?
Yes, I was.
Often?
Well, I received, small coffin in the post. I had a letter on the door of my cabinet saying, giving the list of killed magistrates with my name on it. My flat was broken into, that of my son, and, a lot of incidents.
Your phone was tapped?
My phone was tapped, yes, and and that is probably going on still.
You think it's still going on?
Yes.
There was a film actually made with Isabelle Huppert.
Yes.
I think it must be a nice idea to have an Isabelle Huppert playing you.
Yes, that was. She's a great actress.
And you also published a book, and which has been published in English, and I know that you can get it in the bookstores in Reykjavik now. Which is, I think, it's very interesting because you dedicate the book to investigative magistrates, journalists who have died in the fight against financial corruption.
Yes, and this list is growing every day. This week, 2 persons were killed in Nairobi, human rights defenders, in middle of the day, shot down. Not to talk about Bulgarian journalists. I think 4 of them were killed in 2 years. Russian journalists. So this list that I made in 2002, today it's 3 times the length.
Yes.
It is very dangerous to make investigations into economic crimes.
Yes, but now you travel a lot. You work for the Norwegian NORAD, the Norwegian relief organization.
Yes, and with the Norwegian government, we decided 3 years ago that fighting poverty is very important, building institutions. But the most important thing is to make the tax havens more transparent, because we came to understand that you cannot stop the dictators from plundering, but you can hamper them hiding the profit of their crimes.
Yes.
So we did try to put this on the international agenda, and today we hope that things will be changing.